On this episode of Deleted Wrestle Zone, we're going to talk about Impact Wrestling's second week, or should I say, night two of Rebellion, but also going to throw in a bit of a discussion regarding Hijo Del Fantasma, about who he is, and of course, what could be a talk of the question regarding to Fantasma, him wearing the mask after he lost it about 2 years ago. But we're going to discuss all of that today on this episode of Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up. 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 Get up, get up.
Hey everybody, here. This is J Rod here. Welcome to Deleted Wrestle Zone. So before I start with the talk about Rebellion and all this, I want to give you guys some updates. I'm still working on the DWZ discussions of the Japanese Wrestling Edition. It's still in the works. I'm doing a lot of research, doing a lot of homework. You can see it's really taking a lot of time, but it will get that done. Second of all, is if some of you have been trying to find out how come I haven't thrown any MLW, well, the truth to be told, I want to compile all of what happened from all 4 weeks of MLW, from their super series they've been collaborating with AAA. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to compile all of it. But at the same time, there's been certain things that happened regarding the officials down in both promotions. But we'll get to that some of it. Now, as you all know, I'm going to be talking about Hijo de Fantasma and the rules of mass wrestling. That should be a DWZ discussion, but I will put that as an addition for it. Now, that's in sun. Let's get started with Impact Wrestling's Rebellion, Night 2. Hey everybody, so let's talk about Impact Wrestling Night 2. As you all recall, about a week ago, they didn't have any audience. I have to say it was pretty good solid how they managed to fade out the outside. They just focused the ring and, of course, the entrance stage, because it sounded pretty great. I have to say they really worked up their thing on that, and I'll be discussing that on the podcast soon, as soon as I get everything out of the way. But let's start out with the first match. It was a four-way match that could be somewhat of a way to introduce um, wrestlers to be involved for the X Division Championship. The wrestlers that were involved was Suicide, Chris Bay, what was the other guy? Rohit Raju, and Trey of the Rascals. This was an interesting match, a four-way, because these guys are all X Division material. Um, I was kind of hoping it's either Trey would win it because I feel he deserved it, but it was a great match. There was a moment where everybody had like each other in the back, and they were going back and forth, like you know how you go in front of the line and you go back and forth, and then at some point, Suicide and Trey just backed off and just let Chris Bay and Rahit just go at it. It was really funny, but some great X Division. But Rahit was mostly tried to play smart, like trying to find a way to come up with the win in every past one, because he's not been in good terms with his Desi Hit Squad leader, Gamma, who's been really ticked off with him. You know, losing on a losing effort on certain occasions. But in the end, Chris Bay won the match. Now, do I think Chris Bay is going to be X Division champion? Soon it is possible. We just got to wait and see, because that's how they're gonna roll with it, since now Willie Mack is the new X Division champion. Then we see a little interview with Tessa. Now, in week one, Michael Elgin was stating Tessa and Eddie Edwards were not there because, and he said that by the end of the night, he will be declared as the new Impact World Champion. And Tessa saying that he's being delusional, this and that, and that she will be. So basically, he goes with the story being delusions of grandeur. That's what he's going for. But we'll get to that at the end. Then we see a little review between the rivalry between cancel cultures, uh, Joseph P. Ryan, who we all know him as Joey Ryan, versus the Deaners. Now he was prior before this. He had a match against Cody Deaner and he was unsuccessful. And then now he was booked in the match against Cousin Jake. So this was a match that he's still in a rivalry with those guys, and of course that kind of changed it. There were times that Diener was using his strength, but or should I say, Joseph's intelligence was getting the best of them, and he picked up the win by putting his shoulder down, lifting his leg, and trying to hold up to the bottom rope. That way, he cheated his way through, um, and he thinks that this is going to be a way to cancel the Dieners once and for all. But he lost against Cody Deaner. He may have beaten Cousin Jake, but I have that distinct feeling that the rivalry between him and the Deaners is far from over. Then we see a little video thingy with Rosemary chatting with Tail Valkyrie about how this and that. Tail was still being out there. Apparently, there was supposed to be in Rebellion a match between Jordan Grace and Tail Valkyrie. Valkyrie was not too pleased. So basically, it just kind of ruined the plans. And all of this and that. And it was kind of crazy. And Rosemary kind of was hearing her pain and all this, being a friend as she is. But I thought it was a funny segment the way it is. I'm going to enjoy it. Now, the next thing we see is the match between Havoc and Rosemary. Now, this rivalry goes back a long way, but the change was when Havoc killed uh, Father James Mitchell, and all of a sudden, this match was more of a Full Metal Mayhem match, kind of like a hardcore match. Everybody brought some toys. Now, at some point, there was this woman I didn't recognize. I don't know who she is, and that's when Madison Rain on commentary saying that's Leviathan or Debaya or Lafaya or whatever her name is. And no one, she did not give who she is. She's just saying that she's someone that Havoc knows. So it's still unclear who she was. But I have to say that kind of plays it out like we're trying to find, okay, now we know who this woman is. We know the woman's name, but we don't know who she is. Like, I have that distinct feeling that the next week we will get more information. But the match turned out great. Best moment of that match was when Rosemary grabbed like one of those construction workers' helmet when Havoc just tried to whack her in the head with it, and she just used that to protect herself. Really smart, and she picked up the victory great when she used the lead pipe on Havoc. That's how the match ended, like that. Then we had an interview with Willie Mack and Rich Swann, all this and that. They were talking about what they're going to do next, but the party pooper showed up. Johnny Swinger, like, he still wants a piece of Havoc. He wants that title, even though Johnny Swinger is a real prick, and they just can't stand to get away from him. And that's the problem. They basically, Havoc is, no, Johnny Swinger is still trying to weasel his way to get a title shot, but I guarantee that it will take some time. Then we had a little flashback moment from a year ago from Rebellion, where Rich Swann was in a match against Sammy Callahan, where he picked up victory using the barbed wire baseball bat, and it was crazy how it turned out. But yeah, then we see finally where we're getting to, where Michael Elgins claimed that this is going to end him becoming world champion, saying that Tessa was afraid of him. Tessa is not afraid of anybody. Eddie Edwards, he wasn't the same person anymore. So he's going with this delusions of grandeur, saying he is now, since no one showed up, he is the champion. But all of a sudden, Moose showed up, and he took the TNA World Championship that was supposed to be used for There's No Place Like Home pay-per-view that is currently canceled. As you all know, Moose has hatred towards TNA because people are talking about TNA, and he thinks they need to shut up and talk about him. And he claims he is the TNA World Champion. No, he's not the World Champion. So we got two knuckleheads who have delusions of grandeur. But someone stood up for TNA, and that person was Hernandez. And the match turned into a three-way, but it was not a match for the title. And it was. I'm gonna skip to the end. Moose won, but he claims he's the world champion. Now, Moose has been trying to prove himself that he is the top Impact guy, that he's Mr. Impact. But the problem is, currently, Tessa Blanchard is the champion. So I don't know how this is going to play out. This is how I'm going to see it. They're not going to have two world champions in the same bout. There will be a match between who will be winner take all. That's what I predict. And the way it goes, the way I see it, Michael Elgin wants to get in. He wants to be in the match. He's not going to allow Moose or Tessa ruin his destiny, his thing where he's claiming he is the man who should be champion. And that's what it's going to happen. He's going to find a way to weasel his way in. So that's what I predict. But as you know, since the pandemic happened, Tessa Blanchard is stuck in Mexico. And of course, Michael Elgin thinks otherwise. But yeah, that's how things happen with that. But I'm excited for how it is. Now, before I end this a little bit, I must give you guys a heads up. As you know, there was no commentary in the venue. They actually kind of already pre-taped, and they send it to the home of Josh Mathers and Madison Rayne. If you must know, Madison Rayne and Josh Mathers in real life are husband and wife. Now, she's currently never expected that she could do commentary, but she said that somewhere down the line she would like to continue, even though like she feels like she's still got more to offer as an in-ring performer. But she did a great job. It's like we always seen those commentaries where we have the face and the heel, something that Nico's already talked about. I miss you, Nico. But yeah, but we'll see how that. So that is it for this day. So let's start with Hijo del Fantasma. So let's talk about Hijo del Fantasma. Now, who is this guy? Well, he's a famous masked wrestler who's been around for almost 20 years or some more about that. And he's a second generation wrestler. His real name is George Luis Alcantar Boli. Now, as you all know, his father is the infamous El Fantasma, as known as the Ghost. Now, the gimmick that they have is similar to the comic book hero, the Phantom. So that's where the idea came from. So they use in Spanish El Fantasma, so it means the ghost. So let's talk a bit about Hijo del Fantasma. Like, who is he? What's so strange about it? What's so cool, good about him? Now, he began wrestling in 2000, in the year 2000, in a masked wrestler being called Top Secret. So it's a weird name, but his mask was all black with gold trims on the eye lines of the mask. But some point in 2003, he actually adopted his father's gimmick, and he dubbed himself as El Hijo de Fantasma, or in translation, the son of the ghost or son of the phantoms, that type of thing. So that's how the adoption. We've seen wrestlers down in Mexico. They adopted their dad's gimmick. We've seen that with Santo and his son, Hijo de Santo, Blue Demon Jr., and so on and so on. There's a long list of those types. Um, his first official match was teaming with his father, Fantasma, and his cousin, Fantasma Jr. Now, why is Fantasma Jr. there? Well, it could go on. Basically, we've seen those type, even though he's not his biological son, but that's how it is. But later, he adopted the name Ángel del Muerte, which means the angel of death, and his own dad also goes by that name. But yeah, so that's the story about him in his time from there. Now, in 2008, he jumped ship to go to Consejo Mundial Lucha Libre, or as we know him as CMLL, since he left the promotion, International Wrestling Revolution Group. Now, this is another promotion that is currently around. That's where he actually was before joining. He was part of the Trios Championship. He's always been a specialist. He teamed up with Guys like Mascara and Hector Garza. Now these guys are been known throughout the years. Hector Garza, we've seen him. We know his nephew, Angel Garza, Angel Garza, and pretty much. But he's been participating throughout trios competitions ever since. He and these guys have been CMMO World Trios champions at least a couple of times on certain occasions. But his biggest rivalry was coming from 2009 when he defeated Iverno for the CML World Middleweight Championship. Now, this particular match, it's what gave him the respect of Iverno, made him what he is. And in 2013, he made the jump to AAA, which is Consejo Mundial rival company, much like we're having now with AEW and WWE. He became the latest member of the faction known as Consejo, where he debuted on October 18th at Héroes Inmortales, or in translation, Immortal Heroes. So that was like his debut when he joined the faction. And since then, and then we jump into back in August 26, 2018, where he lost his mask in a mask versus mask against LA Park. And since then, in March 26 of 2019, he decided to leave AAA. So he was there for a short time. Now, he has participated in Lucha Underground from 2014 to 2019, but however, he made appearances in season 1, 2, and 4. Now, what about 3? He wasn't there much throughout the entire series. Now, it's still unclear what was going on, but he wasn't adopting the name Hijo del Fantasma. He was known as King Cuerno, or in translation, King Horn, King Antler. And it was a pretty good character, popular character in Lucha Underground. Um, he he appeared at the end of the season 3, where he attacked Mil Muertes and takes off with the gauntlet. But as you must know, King Cuerno was amongst the few wrestlers who were contracted by Lucha Underground, and they demanded their release. And of course, Lucha Underground and the network El Rey granted their release. And he also participated for a year from 2017 to 2018 with Impact Wrestling, where he debuted representing AAA at the time, where he teamed up against LAX Santana Ortiz, representing, of course, Impact or Global Force Wrestling at the time. Then there was Garza Jr. and Leather Kid representing The Crash, and Naomichi Marufuji and Taiji Shimori representing Pro Wrestling Noah. So that was a match that brought him into AAA and got the attention of many of the staff of Impact and all this and that. And since then, he was in a rivalry, teamed up with Pagano and Tejano Jr. throughout the entire time. I remember those matches pretty well. And then that's it. Now, let's jump into today. He did sign with WWE back in August 14th of 2019. Now, during his few weeks, he got injured during the Performance Center, put him out of action for several months. However, he did debut in NXT on February 15th of this year, 2020, as using his name, George Woolley, teaming with Raul Mendoza. But they defeated their opponents, Lewis Howley and what's his name, Sam Stroker. Now he's participating as for the interim NXT Cruiserweight tournament, the part of Group B. Now, why am I bringing this guy up? So, let me take this hat, it's getting hot. Why am I talking about this man? Now, there has been talk with many fans about Hijo del Fantasma. I did mention that he lost his mask in 2018 in Triple Mania. And now there's been people down in Mexico, they've been talking about this, like, wait a minute, why is he wearing his mask? He lost his mask. Apparently there has been some rules that were set that kind of made sense. Because there's been similar situations with certain wrestlers that kind of bend the rules a little bit. Now, to understand this, we need to know why is that important. So, let's go back in time to WCW 1999. Now, as you all recall, there was the stable faction known as Latino World Order, or LWO. Now, the NWO were reformed, and they demanded that they remove the LWO. All members except for Ray take off their shirts. Now, when NWO were having their fit, so this was in the storyline, they've been attacking Ray to force him to take off the shirt. Now, this is what led to what people like to call the WCW sins. They forced Ray to put his mask on the line, and when he lost in the pay-per-view teaming with Conan, this was in what was it? In Super Brawl 9. It was a hair versus mask match. And when Ray lost, it was very disappointing. He did tell his uncle about the situation, all that. Now, many fans were angry. Now, this was not the first time something like this happened with luchadors that lost their mask in WCW. First one, there was Juventud Guerrero. Basically, he was one of those guys, and so was Psychosis. So, that is what happened. And people like to call those WCW sins. This was a bad decision move that Eric Bischoff put out. And do I think it is a bad decision? Yeah, because I think, in my opinion, he failed to understand what mask wrestlers are and how losing their mask is like, how do I say this? Taking away their identity. And he wasn't following traditions like we normally would here. So that is one of the situations. Now, as you know, Rey Mysterio continued throughout his WCW years without the mask, but he teamed up forming factions like No Limit Soldiers, the Filthy Animals. But ever since WCW folded, he returned to Consejo Mundial for maybe a year or two, did some indie shows, and even participated in Puerto Rico. Now, let's jump into the years that led him to what people would say is the greatest year. He actually signed with WWE in 2002, where they decided to drop the name Rey Mysterio Jr. They decided to just go Rey Mysterio. That is pretty much what they wanted to do, to give him his own identity, respecting the culture. Now, Vince insisted to Ray that he put on the mask, and of course Ray was very happy. But the problem is, he had to contact the Lucha Libre Commission to give him permission to wear the mask again. Now, this is the part of the story that people need to understand. Many fans in Mexico were angry because they believed that Ray was violating tradition. Now, the Boxing and Wrestling Commission didn't see things the fans' way. They granted his permission to re-wear the mask because A, he did not lose the mask in Mexico. He lost the mask in the US. So that doesn't change anything. And B, it was no mask versus mask type of match, which is good in certain ways, because that thing is, we have seen in Lucha Libre mask versus hair matches, but they don't mean anything, because I have seen wrestlers that lost their hair a bunch of times. It's not the same when you have two luchadors facing off mask versus mask. But the commission made the decision to grant him permission to wear the mask again because of what happened. They were, in my opinion, they were giving a little justice that was wrongfully done by WCW. And WWE, on the other hand, decided not to go that route. They decided to play by their own rules, but respecting the culture in a way that makes fans happy. And that's why Ray continues to wear the mask, but regardless of that, he is like that. Now, there was a situation where, how do I say, other wrestlers continue to wear the mask, and those who continue without. Now, as you all know, Psychosis was amongst the few wrestlers that were part of the WCW sins, along with Ray and Juventud Guerrero. Now, Psychosis was unable to wear a mask since he was one of the three wrestlers that lost their mask in WCW. Now, the reason that happened was because AAA owns the name, and they gave the name to someone else. Psychosis number two. I don't know the guy's real name, but the first Psychosis became known as Nicho El Millonario. He made different appearances, but there are times he did wrestle with and without the mask, depending on the location. Now, if he was in Mexico, um, he just calls himself Nicho. But when he's here in the States, he's called Psychosis. But that's how the whole thing works with him. I even met him once during a indie promotion by Baja Stars. He wasn't wearing his mask, but he does wear his mask once in a while, depending on that. Another situation is with Juventud, where instead of playing by going with the rules that they're saying, they decided, he decided to embrace wrestling without the mask, which is kind of okay because he wants to do that. Now, another wrestler who kind of was in in a similar predicament but decided to play by the rules, Dr. Wagner Jr. Now, Dr. Wagner Jr. lost his mask in Triple Mania on August 26, 2017 against Psycho Clown, which is a traditional wrestling match of mask versus mask. But here's the kicker. When he's in Mexico, he wrestles without the mask, but he comes out to the ring wearing the mask, and then once the match starts, he takes it off. But he did appear in season 2 and season 3 of Lucha Underground wearing the mask. Now, the rules on this, if they lost the mask in a certain territory, like for example Mexico, then they're okay to wear the mask. He did wear the mask when he wrestled at SoCal Pro Wrestling against Jeff Jarrett. It was a match that I missed, but that's the price to pay for not seeing it. But there's certain rules that were being played on this matter. So, and there have been other wrestlers that kind of were not playing by the rules, or there were certain people that kind of are. Now, another example of that is Silver King, the brother of Dr. Wagner Jr. Now, he lost his mask on November 12th, 1987, in UWA, which is Universal Wrestling Association, against Hijo del Santo. Now, since then, he hasn't worn a mask, but he made his debut. But he did wear a mask again. He actually wasn't using Silver King. Since he left WCW, he actually worked as Tiger Mask. Oh, no, Black Tiger, the rival to Tiger Mask. He was amongst the few that were there. Since he made his debut on June 13, 2008, as Silver King, wearing the mask against, teaming with La Parka AAA and Chessman. But at this time, he was wearing his mask. Now, this led into a dispute between him and the president of the Boxing and Wrestling Commission, what's his name? El Fantasma. Basically, he was not allowed to wear the mask because he already lost it. But since then, AAA decided to work the way around the name. Instead of booking him as Silver King, he goes by Silver Kane. So basically, as long as he's called Silver Kane, there won't be a problem. Now, why is this important? Because people think, those people who know Hijo Del Fantasma, you'll be saying, wait a minute, why is he wearing a mask again? He lost it. True. But keep in mind, certain rules were placed that give loopholes. And that's important. People say that just because they lost their mask down in another country or another territory doesn't mean you cannot wear the mask at this territory. So there are rules that can be played. Now, the really interesting is, okay, so if he's allowed to wear a mask anywhere in the world, it could be either here in the States, the UK, Europe, Japan, or anywhere else. But what happens if he goes back to Mexico? If WWE decides to do a tour down in Mexico, well, that's a different story. It is possible that he may not be able to participate due to the fact that he doesn't want to violate the rules. But you probably ask yourself, wait a minute, but you said his dad is the president of the Boxing and Wrestling Commission. True. But if I was El Fantasma, I wouldn't use any leeway to give a free pass to my son if it was me. But we just gotta wait and see. If that ever comes, then hopefully things can work out. Because I know WWE are putting faith on having Hijo Del Fantasma. But here's the thing about WWE, you should all understand. They never had Rey Mysterio put his mask on. Same thing with Sin Cara, Calistico, Lance Dorada, Gran Metalik. These guys were never put in a situation where they had to put their mask on. But there have been situations where wrestlers were told to take off their mask. One of the examples is Humberto Carrillo. So, if you guys don't know, he was known as Ultimo Ninja. He was part of the Crash promotion. He even participated in Pro Wrestling Noah. I got this information from Christy James, an independent wrestler out of Austin, Texas, who I met her at Baja Stars USA. And she kind of said that she predicted that Ultimo Ninja might lose his mask or take it off, and he didn't believe that there was no way they were going to do that, but sadly they did. And I mean, I don't know what was the reason of having this guy remove his mask. I mean, I thought Vince was in the side, or there's certain things about wrestlers that he sees like, nah, I don't think he's good enough with the mask, or they prefer that he'd be better off without it. There was talk about Dragon Lee that there was a chance that if they signed him, they were going to have him take off his mask. But Dragon Lee said that even if he did get signed by WWE, there is no way he's going to let them take off his mask. So basically, Dragon Lee dodged a bullet there. Now, do I think there's certain rules and boundaries about it? Do I have to say, yeah? Sometimes the rules can be a little tricky at times, but all depends on the scenario. Like I said, WCW sins were forcing these wrestlers to take off their mask, and some fans feel like, yes, they didn't play the tradition, but like Rey Mysterio got his justice back where he was allowed to wear the mask, even though we know what he looks like without it. Wagner was smart enough to use the mask how he fits, and I feel Hijo Del Fantasma do, but we cannot say that his dad somehow pulled some pull. I hate to be in the position that I be that fan, like saying, oh, he did it because he did it for some, like, yeah, but we're not going to go there. So I think that's about it for this bit. Hope you guys have a good. This should have been on the W and DWZ discussions, but I decided to do it today anyway. So I think that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys love this episode. There'll be more coming up. I will be doing the Wednesday Night War the following day or so, but we'll go from there. So I must bid all of you adieu. Hope you guys are washing your hands and staying safe. Goodbye. And have a nice day. Bang.